I just started to think about the stinking gap. GAP, gap, the gap between where we often are or where we find ourselves, the gap between there and where we want to be. Okay. And certainly that gap a lot of times has really valid reasons. All right. There's real reasons why we're not where we want to be. Um, I had a knee replacement 4 or 5 months ago, and some areas of my life haven't. They're not where I want to be because I haven't been able to walk. I couldn't walk for a long time, and I couldn't use it, and so I got to play catch up in a couple more months. There's times when we go through illnesses. There's times when bad things happen to good people, and that keeps us from getting where we want to be. But here's where we all got to wake up. A lot of times the gap between where we are and where we want to be, the only reason it's there is fear. That's it. That's just it. Here I am. I want to be over there. I want to be in a better place in my relationship, but I'm afraid to have the difficult conversation. Well, I want to get to that next level in my career, but to do that, I got to get a certification. I'd have to go down to the community college and take a class, and I'm not smart enough for that. I might fail. I don't know if I can. I'm not as smart as those other people, or I'm not even going to interview for the job because they're not going to hire me. Or I've had this idea. I want to pursue this little sideline business, but I can't do that. It takes money to make money, or there's no way to, you can't get ahead. How 90% of them fail anyway, and gosh, been single I think I'd like to have a meaningful relationship. Maybe like to get married, and I met this person, and nah, she'd never value me. She's, not blah blah. Do you get the point? A lot of times, what is in that gap is a big stop sign, and it's not spelled STOP. It's spelled FEAR. FEAR. So, how about that? And you know what? This is for all of us, because all of us. I'll tell you a little story. All of us are the, ready for this? The parable of the talents. Now, most of the times we read a parable like the parable of the talents, and we pick out a character and we identify with that character, or say, I want to be like that one and not be like that one, or whatever. And certainly, that's probably the best application of the parable of the talents. If you know the story, the master has three workers, and he gives one of them 5 talents. He gives one of them 2 talents, and he gives another one 1 talent. And he says, use your talents. I'm going to go off on a long journey. I'm going to come back and see what you did. So he goes off, he comes back. The one that had 5 invested them, worked them, used them, turned that into 10. The one that had 2, double theirs as well. And each time he said, well done, good and faithful servant. And I'm going to even give you more. And then he said to the one that only had 1, because the one that had 1, he said to him, what'd you do with yours? And he said, well, I was afraid. I was afraid of you. You're going to criticize me, and you're going to reap from me where you haven't sown. You're going to expect things out of me, and you haven't even helped me. You're going to want to return, and you haven't even given me the equipment I need. You haven't even given me yet. And so I was afraid. So I buried it in the ground. I didn't do anything with it, and I protected it. So now here it is. I still have it. I didn't lose it. The master turned to him and said, not good, basically, you wicked, lazy servant. And then he says, I'm going to take yours away and give it to somebody who does something with it. Now, here's what I mean. I mean, the lesson's pretty clear there, right? Whatever we have, that's what we have, and we got to use it. And sometimes huge things can be built from having nothing because we use them. Mr. Honda, who built Honda Motor Corporation, Honda cars, Honda motorcycles, everything we see, he didn't have anything. And you know what he did at one point during World War II? Because there was no metal available to build his little engines out of his garage that he put on bicycles because cars couldn't be used in the war and all that. Get this. He runs out of metal to make them with. And so he figures out in the war, the planes were discarding gas cans and other kinds of metal and all this stuff. He goes out in the fields and starts collecting this stuff to make the metal, to make the engine, to make the bicycle that ran on its own. Now we call it the little motorcycle he made, Honda. And then he developed the piston, and that started on and on and on. I mean, he could say, well, I don't have any metal. How can I do anything? I don't have anything. See, here's the point. Fear. What if you only have one and you go out and use it and you lose it? Well, if you're not afraid of failure, then you go, okay, lost that one. Now what am I going to do? And you go figure it out. But if you're afraid of that next step, there are different ways that people are afraid. See, we're all freaking afraid. I can't even remember when I was trying to start out and do something. I don't even remember anything that I wasn't freaked out about. Remember the first time I sat down with a real patient? They were coming in for anxiety. I'm scared of them. I don't know what I'm doing, right? I'm supposed to know what I'm doing. Sitting there in that lab and supervisors watching me through a two-way mirror, and it's being recorded. It's going to be evaluated. Scared to death. So it's not that, the problem with fear is not like trying to get to not afraid. You will probably, I don't know, by and large, in the stuff we feel confident in, I'm certainly not afraid now to, sit down with patients. Toddlers might be afraid to walk the first two steps, but after a while they're not afraid. We certainly get over fear, but you're never going to live in a world without anxiety or without fear. But the question is, how are you afraid, and what does your reaction to fear look like, and what's it made of? It's been really interesting reviewing all the anxiety research and what happens in the brain. And now we have, all the incredible abilities, with brain scanning and neurological equipment and all this stuff to kind of really almost like live in there and see this stuff. And what happens is when you're afraid and all that fear stuff starts to rise, all of your capabilities over here that get things done, like thinking and judgment and creativity and goal orientation and planning and actually doing something, those go down. So that's kind of normal. But here's the trick. If you join the fear with your ability to think, with your ability to make decisions, with your ability to make things happen, now it's 2 against 1. In other words, if I'm going to, I got to make a relationship better and I got to sit down and have a difficult conversation and I feel afraid, well, I got the part of me that knows what's good to do and knows how to do it. Maybe I went to boundaries.me and I even know the script, right? You can go to boundaries.me and see, and I'll give you an outline of how to have the conversation. We can even know all that, and those are the tools you need. But then you start to get afraid, and then you start thinking about the fear. Well, what if they could reject me? They're going to scream it, and then now you're using the very capacities that you need in order to get what you want. Now they're on the side of the fear, and now it is game over. That's what happens. I want you to do an audit of your life. Okay, this will take you 5 minutes, or you could spend a 2-day retreat on it. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to take the pie of life that I talk about. Okay. What's the pie? 3 big pieces. Your clinical life, how you're feeling, your anxiety, stress, addictions, depression, energy levels, getting in shape, whatever it is on the clinical side of life versus thriving, being in a good mood, you know, optimistic, thinking clearly instead of negatively, all those things. All right. That's one piece of the pie. The second piece of the pie is your relationships, all your relationships, friendships, marriage, dating, parenting, extended family, all that. And then the third side, the performance side, reaching your goals and dreams, things that you want to go accomplish. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to analyze the gap. I want you to draw a circle and say, here's where it is. And then I want you to look at each slice of the pie and say, what in that slice of the pie, instead of here in the circle, what in that slice of the pie would I like to make bigger? I'd like to feel better. I'd like to work on my anxiety. I'd like to work on my depression, or I'd like to work on this relationship, or I'd like to work on some goal. Okay, now in that gap between where you are and where you want to be, I want you to name the fears that are keeping you there. The rest of it you can figure out. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to get better in those 3 areas of life. Go to boundaries.me, and I got 80 courses on there of how to improve those 3 areas of life. There's a lot of things you do. You get a coach, you get a mentor, you get a therapist, you can ask a friend who knows how to do it. I mean, there's no shortage of how to get from here to there, but none of them work if we listen to the fear. One of my favorite verses, it says in Proverbs, what chapter is that? I'm going to even look this one up. It's chapter 26, verse 13. Here's what it says. It says, the sluggard says, sluggard, what is a sluggard? Sort of like sometimes translated, the lazy person or the slacker, the one who doesn't do anything, right? They just kind of sit around. Literally, I think the Hebrew word means to lean. And the etymology of that word actually means somebody that avoids pain. I can identify with that, right? In fact, I wrote about this in 9 Things You Simply Must Do, where God one day told me to go read that verse. Seriously, I'm not kidding you, about myself in one particular area where I wasn't facing the pain to go accomplish what I needed to accomplish. So the sluggard doesn't want to deal with the fear. All right. So here's what the sluggard says. The sluggard says, there's a lion in the road, a fierce lion roaming the streets. Oh no. Meaning, I can't get out of bed and go out there and get something I want. There's a lion out there. There's no lion out there. There's a lion in his head. So what's the lion in our head? It's growling at you. Let's figure out the fear that's standing in between you and where you want to be. Let's deal with it.